others. I think that instead we should be increasing staff. Now, another principle states that these measures should only be used as a last resort, and I think that that is another important factor, and I'll continue after question period, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue will have 5 minutes following question period when we return to this debate.
Déclaration des députés, l'honorable.
The Honourable Member for Pontigny. The Conservative leader confirmed once again this week that their priority is to impose the Energy East pipeline on Quebec. It's not that the federal government pays its fair share for health care costs, and it's certainly not that they're doing their fair share on climate change. No, their priority is to force a pipeline down our throats that no one wants. A pipeline that will endanger 800 of our waterways without generating any economic spin-offs. So we have to take all of the risks while the oil companies get all the benefits. The Montreal metropolitan area is against it, but to be clear, the Conservative leader should know that there are 3 times more people there than in his province. First Nations are against it, unions are against it, environmentalists are against it, municipalities are against it. Well, so the Conservative Party is going to find a lot of opposition to this in Quebec, including the Bloc Québécois. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Oakville North Burlington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our community recently lost a very special person with the passing of my dear friend Veronica Tyrell. Veronica made an enormous contribution to Halton Region by promoting, protecting, and celebrating diversity. Veronica was tireless in educating all of us about Oakville's Black history and our ties to the Underground Railroad. I will never forget leading a Black History bike tour to an Emancipation Day picnic she organized and arriving to the sounds of a choir singing freedom. I worked with her to have our Oakville Civic Holiday renamed Emancipation Day, and she was thrilled. As president of the Canadian Caribbean Association of Halton, Veronica organized galas, Black History events, Christmas concerts, and so much more. She founded a cross-generational steel pan band and youth programs with Halton Police. Veronica dedicated herself to improving the community, but mostly she was a loving wife, mother, grandmother, and friend. One we will miss terribly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Halton Norfolk.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to highlight this summer's many great festivals and celebrations in my riding of Halton Norfolk. We started out the season with the Dunnville Mudcat Festival and the Delhi Strawberry Festival, followed by all-day Canada Day celebrations in Caledonia and Port Dover, who hasn't missed a year since Confederation. Then we had Lavender Fest, the Tour de Norfolk, Cayuga Fest, Hagersville Rocks, Lynn River Music and Arts Festival, Selkirk Gas Fest, Turkey Point Summerfest, Dunnville Agricultural Fair, Port Dover Summerfest, Houghton Fair, South Coast Jazz Festival, Port Rowan Bay Fest, Delhi Fall Fest, Langton Fall Fair, Donnybrook Fair, Roots to Roots Film Festival, Norfolk Studio Fair, Caledonia Fair, and the Norfolk County Fair and Horse Show. And we rounded out the season with Pumpkin Fest in Waterford. I commend all the organizers, volunteers, and sponsors for continuing these events and growing and making them better each and every year.
The Honourable Member for Newmarket Aurora.
Mr. Speaker, when you give a smile, you get a smile. Smile Cookie Week was held at Tim Hortons locations across Canada recently. In Newmarket Aurora, $1 from every cookie purchase went to benefit Community Living Central York, raising a total of $29,239. Wow. Community Living Central York works hard every day to ensure everyone in our community is included, regardless of their abilities. They ensure that those with developmental disabilities can reach their fullest potential. Community Living Central York recently broke ground on their new, fully accessible home in Newmarket, where they will operate day programs and offer services to their clients, allowing them to fully participate in our community. Thank you to all the volunteers and workers at Community Living for your dedication, commitment, and passion to ensure that our community is one where everyone truly belongs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Cowichan, Mellahut, Langford.
A few weeks ago, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change released its report showing that our current carbon emissions trajectory shows that we are headed towards catastrophic climate change. It is an unfortunate hallmark of this Parliament that we cannot collectively bring ourselves to see beyond the next election and to where short-term political gains incentivize us more than our collective human future on this planet. The Earth will go on with or without us. It doesn't care about our petty politics or the bickering about the carbon tax. It doesn't care that the Conservatives have no plan or that the Liberals' plan isn't working. It is our children and our future generations who will most savagely feel the effects of the lack of courage and vision of this place. We can rise to meet this challenge and create a better world with a new, clean energy economy. We just need a government with the will to make it happen.
The honourable member for Sault Ste. Marie.
Mr. Speaker, October is Dysautonomia Awareness Month. My constituent, Emily Wilkinson, is a 19-year-old Sault College student. She studies early childhood education, coaches a children's soccer team, and hopes to someday go to Africa. 3 years ago, Emily was diagnosed with dysautonomia, a condition causing malfunctions to the autonomic nervous system. Emily couldn't stand for more than a minute. She was bedridden and had to be homeschooled. This condition has caused all kinds of distressing symptoms for Emily, including dizziness, tremors, heart palpitations, severe fatigue, brain fog, and seizure-like activities, and many, many more symptoms. Emily says living with this condition is comparable to someone living with congenital heart failure and COPD. It takes people affected by this disease 3 times more energy to stand than a normal person. Mr. Speaker, Emily has a dream of spreading awareness so that people can get help that they need faster and so more research can be accomplished. I'm impressed by Emily's courage and honored to help share her message with this House in Canada. Thank you.
The honourable member for Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke.
Mr. Speaker, get your orange on. It's hunting season in the Ottawa Valley. For Canadians who share a love of the great outdoors and the pursuit of traditional heritage activities, for Canadians who enjoy the camaraderie of a hunt camp with family and friends, fall is a favorite time of year. Anyone who's experienced a week in the bush, evenings spent by a campfire, stories share, instinctively know what I'm talking about. The millions of responsible, law-abiding firearms owners do not understand why the Liberal Party feels it must fade our independence. We don't understand why this Liberal Prime Minister encourages the mean and divisive policies that target law-abiding citizens like Bill C-71, and how its current ploy to promote a fake ban on firearms is going. It does this while pushing laws like Bill C-75, which decreases criminal penalties. Farmers, hunters, and recreational shooters know they're not safe whenever there's a petty tyrant sitting on the throne. To all hunters, be careful, be safe, and have a...
Honourable member for Thunder Bay, Rainy River.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, October 23rd concludes the 2nd anniversary of the launch of The Secret Path, a 2016 multimedia project by Gord Downey and graphic artist Jeff Lemire. The Secret Path was inspired by the true story of Chani Wenjack, a 12-year-old Anishinaabe boy who died on this day, October 23rd, in 1966. Chani froze to death while running away from the Celia Jeffrey Indian Residential School in Kenora, a building where I once worked as executive director of Grand Council Treaty 3. Chani at the time was trying to return home to his family that he was taken from over 600 kilometers away at Algoki Post, the Martin Falls First Nation. Today, all of us in the House and Canadians from coast to coast to coast share the loss with the Wenjack family, and we thank the late Gord Downey for using his voice to share Chani's life with Canadians. By listening to and sharing the stories of residential school children, we will ensure they are never forgotten. Merci, miigwech.
The honourable member for Shefford. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to acknowledge the exceptional work of some of the teachers and staff at schools in my riding of Shefford. They work hard to set up extracurricular activities that teach students the importance of community engagement and demystify our system of parliamentary democracy. At PG Ostigi Secondary School in Saint-Césaire, students are invited to form a real parliament of elected students who want to get involved in student democracy. These young representatives are named ministers, and a prime minister is also elected. Their tasks are to represent the students and make proposals that would improve the quality of life at the school. Hats off to the students who have shown leadership in participating in this great initiative. Thank you.
The honourable member for Halliburton, Kawartha Lennox Brock.
Mr. Speaker, each year, 2 students from each of the 7 high schools in my riding are selected to participate in a program I call the Capital Experience. During their 3-day visit to Ottawa, they'll learn about various career opportunities that await them following their graduation from post-secondary education. They'll meet an ambassador, members of the media, lawyers from the Supreme Court, and executives from Summa Strategies. I'd like to introduce this year's participants: Josie Quigley and Curtis Adams from Halliburton Highlands, Zach Schumer and Haley Canavan from Brock, Jordan Metro and Maria Fernanda Harrow from Crestwood, Sean Suter and Charlotte Newman from Fenland Falls, Sam Collis and Tiana Henshaw from LCVI, Bethany Johnson and Jonah Grignon from IU Weldon, Dahlia Shariza and Ethan Bain from St. Thomas Aquinas. I'd also like to thank the sponsors, the Lions Clubs, the Rotary Clubs, local legions, and small businesses who contributed. It's my hope that these students will be inspired as they consider future opportunities. I'd like to invite my colleagues to welcome these students to Ottawa.
Yes. The honourable member for Halifax.
Mr. Speaker, in Halifax, Nova Scotia, October 23rd is HMCS Kootenay Day. HMCS Kootenay was commissioned into the Royal Canadian Navy in 1959 as a Restigouche-class destroyer, serving until 1995. Kootenay and her crew demonstrated great courage and ability. Sadly, she also faced moments of tragedy, like on the morning of October 23rd, 1969. 49 years ago today, HMCS Kootenay was passing through the English Channel when she began to perform a full-power trial. 11 minutes in, a mechanical failure caused a deadly explosion in the starboard gearbox. The devastation took 9 lives, injuring 53 more. This tragedy is still considered the worst peacetime accident in the Royal Canadian Navy. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to invite all the members in this House to join me in expressing our utmost respect and gratitude for the crew of HMCS Kootenay and their loved ones. May we always be reminded of their sacrifice and valor. Thank you.
The honourable member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, on October 20th, in the historic village of Val-Jalbert, the Festin du Centenaire was held to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Hôtel-Dieu in Roberval, which was founded by the Augustines of the Mercy of Jesus. This activity brought together the entire population of Roberval and celebrated events at the end of the month. There were various activities to celebrate this history, including an exhibition entitled The Hôtel-Dieu of Roberval and the Augustines of the Mercy of Jesus, 100 Years of History and Devotion. All these activities aim to commemorate the arrival of 6 nuns in Roberval in 1918 at the Hôtel-Dieu in Chicoutimi. They founded what is now the Hôtel-Dieu, which is a very important institution for residents of Roberval. I'd like to thank Régent Perron, the president of the organizing committee, and his entire team for having honored these men and women who look out for our health and well-being. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Foothills.
Today, the Liberals unveiled their job-killing carbon tax scheme in its attempt to buy votes, and Canadians are not buying. The Liberal tax grab will make everything more expensive, especially for those families who can afford it the least. This is Liberal math at its finest, tossing Canadians a few coins that will not cover the higher costs of heating our homes, feeding our families, or filling up our cars. Opposition to Liberal carbon tax has been harsh. For example, today in the Financial Post, and I quote, "The federal plan involves adding even more regulations to the mix than sticking a carbon tax on top. This looks nothing like what economists have recommended." The Liberals are also giving a sweetheart deal to the biggest emitters. Shame. That means the financial burden of the carbon tax rests solely on the backs of hardworking Canadians, our farmers, and our small businesses. Conservatives will fight for lower taxes, defend Canadian jobs, everything the Liberal carbon tax threatens. Conservatives will repeal the carbon tax, and it won't cost Canadians a nickel.
The honourable member for Kingston and the Islands.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Today I am honoured to stand and recognize all those who ran in the Ontario municipal elections yesterday. Congratulations not just to those who won, but to everyone who put their name forward to make our cities and towns better places to live. A big thank you to those who volunteered and helped out. Volunteers are the backbone of our elections, and without your dedication, elections would not happen. To those who were successful last night, I can tell you as a former mayor and city councillor, there is nothing quite as humbling as representing a community as municipal elected officials do, where the day-to-day lives of constituents are affected with every decision you make. In my riding, the City of Kingston and Frontenac Islands have bright futures ahead under the renewed leadership of Mayors Brian Patterson and Dennis Doyle. I look forward to working with them and their new councils to continue to make our region of Canada thrive. Congratulations to all.
The honourable member for Trois-Rivières. Mr. Speaker, if you don't believe in miracles, let me tell you a story about what happened in my riding last weekend. During the 5th annual Holy Spirit race in Nicolet, Marisol Saint-Ange, who is a quadruple amputee since she contracted flesh-eating disease in 2012, reached her goal of walking 3 kilometers with her prosthetic limbs. Alain Robert, her life partner, was at her side the entire time to encourage her and show her the kind of love that can move mountains. As she crossed the finish line, she summed up her life philosophy in this way: with everything I've been through, if I can just show people that it's worth fighting, it's worth continuing on, because life is so precious, far more precious than any problems that you might meet. Thank you to Marisol Saint-Ange and Alain Robert for their inspiring story and for showing such resilience, selflessness, and love. You're an inspiration not only to the Suicide Prevention Foundation, which will receive the proceeds of the race, but to everyone around you.
The honourable member for Barrie Innisfil.
On a Quebec TV show Sunday night, the Prime Minister said this about greenhouse gas emissions: even if Canada stopped everything tomorrow and the other countries didn't have any solutions, it wouldn't make a big difference. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister actually said Canada can't make a difference without other countries doing the same, and the reality is those countries are not doing a thing. Yet this morning, the Prime Minister announced a gimmicky carbon tax plan that will do nothing for the environment and nothing to reduce emissions. What it does do, however, is ensure that hard-working Canadian families and seniors who contributed so much to this country will pay more in tax for just about everything. It will continue to make Canadian businesses less competitive and continue to drive investment away from Canada. How can anyone in this country believe, after all of the promises made and broken by this Prime Minister and all of his failures, that Canadian families will come out ahead with this tax? It's a laughable proposal meant to buy votes, and Canadians will see it for what it is: an election vote-buying gimmick.
The honourable member for Toronto Danforth.
Mr. Speaker, today is a Global Awareness Day for sudden unexpected death in epilepsy. Ceci est quand quelqu'un qui allait...
Someone who has epilepsy may die suddenly for no known reason.
Mr. Speaker, but many Canadians do not know about this important issue, and that's why a day like today is so important. The goal of today is to raise awareness, increase education about sudden unexpected death in epilepsy, and to recognize the lives lost because of this issue. I would like to thank 2 women in my community who have been so forceful and strong in advocating for this. They co-founded SUDUP Awareness, the short form for it. Tamsin Jeffs lost her sister to SUDUP. She also has epilepsy, and she has worked tirelessly as an advocate. Also, Dr. Elizabeth Donner, who's a neurologist who has worked on this issue, and she has been a tremendous advocate. I would like to thank them and to raise awareness. Thank you.
Questions orales. Oral questions. The honourable leader of the opposition.
Mr. Speaker, this morning the Prime Minister did what every Liberal does best. He announced a new tax. This tax on carbon will increase the price of everything: groceries, gas, heating. Not only will Canadians pay more, but it will not help the environment. How can the Prime Minister, how does he intend to bring down GHGs by increasing taxes? Mr. Speaker, Canadians expect their government to have a consistent plan to fight climate change. It's not surprising to see the Conservatives stick their heads in the sand on this major issue. And that's exactly what they did for 10 years under Stephen Harper. Mr. Speaker, climate change is real, and we must act urgently, and this urgency is increasing in order to protect the future of our children, our grandchildren, and we have a plan to do exactly that. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, Halloween has come early for this Prime Minister. He was in Toronto earlier this morning trick-or-treating. For hardworking Canadian families, he's going to raise their cost of gas and home heating. That's the trick. For large industrial polluters, they will get a complete exemption from the new carbon tax plan. That's the treat. Why is it that under this Prime Minister, every time he comes up with a new scheme, there are treats for large corporate polluters and tricks for hardworking Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend knows very well that it's exactly the opposite of what our government's doing. Mr. Speaker, our government has a plan to fight climate change. The Conservative Party have, for over a decade under Mr. Harper, refused to do anything meaningful about climate change. Mr. Speaker, we made a commitment to Canadians in 2015 that we would have a robust plan, including putting a price on pollution. That's exactly what the Prime Minister announced today. It's the most effective measure, and I'm sorry that the Conservative Party has absolutely nothing to say about their plan because they don't have one.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister knows that that is simply not the case. Large industrial polluters are not subject to this carbon tax plan. But hard-working Canadian families, moms who have to drive their kids to soccer practice, small businesses trying to compete in a more competitive global economy, they'll pay the burden of this new carbon tax. But large corporate polluters get off scot-free. How does the Prime Minister think that that's fair?
The Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, again, I think my honourable friend perhaps is somewhat confused with Stephen Harper's lack of a plan for 10 years. Mr. Speaker, we've been very clear. We've been very clear that putting a price on pollution is one of the most effective ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. My honourable friend thinks that pollution should be free, and he would take back money from hard-working middle-class Canadians that we will be giving them by putting a price on pollution. Mr. Speaker, this will make our economy more competitive and will create good jobs for middle-class Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, it's this Prime Minister's plan that has made pollution free for large industrial polluters who can afford well-paid government relations experts. But you know who can't, Mr. Speaker? Hard-working Canadian families. Moms and dads trying to pay their heating bill and bring their kids to hockey practice. It's people living in rural areas that have to drive long distances to get to work. They don't have well-connected Liberal government relations experts. Why is the government raising the cost of living for hardworking families and giving special breaks to large polluters?
Honourable Minister of Environmental Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, it doesn't matter how many times my honourable friend repeats the same sentence, it won't make it accurate. Unlike the Conservatives, Mr. Speaker, who think that pollution should be free, we have a plan to ensure that big polluters pay under our system. We've been clear from the beginning. Pricing pollution is important to protecting our economic competitiveness. Maybe my honourable friend could explain why in British Columbia, in Quebec, where they've had a price on pollution for a long time, those are amongst the most competitive and performing economies in Canada.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I'm taking the Prime Minister at his word. It's his own backgrounder that says that large industrial polluters are exempt from this plan. Now, they're trying to trick Canadians into thinking that somehow they'll be better off with a new tax. If they want Canadians to believe that they will be better off when the music stops after this Liberal shell game, will they finally table the documents that indicate what the true cost of the Liberal carbon tax will be on those families?
The Honourable Minister of Government Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend has spent a lot of time pretending that there's some hidden cost to a Liberal plan. Mr. Speaker, what he's not telling Canadians is that he either has no plan himself or his plan is so appalling that he's got to hide that until after the election. So, Mr. Speaker, let's be very clear. We committed to Canadians in 2015 that we would put a price on pollution and have a serious plan to attack climate change. Only a Conservative would find it shocking that today, Mr. Speaker, we're respecting an engagement we made to Canadians in the last election.
Order, please. The member for Rimouski-Nejet-Témiscouata, Les Basques.
And we get to know more about the USMCA, Canadians are quickly coming to the conclusion that Liberals did not get a good deal. Because of the drug cost increases it will bring, because of the yet another breach in the supply management system it will create, and because there is no guarantee that steel and aluminum tariffs will be gone. Workers in these industries all across the country feel that their government has let down. Simple question. Why did Liberals roll over instead of standing up for Canadians?
The Minister of Transport.
I have trouble understanding why the NDP doesn't understand that our fantastic team negotiated a great agreement for Canada, an agreement which will give us access, stable access to the world's biggest market. So this is an opportunity to rejoice, and with regard to steel and aluminum tariffs, we are going to fight to get those withdrawn. The honourable member. Canadians are doubting this. Whether it's steel and aluminum tariffs or postal workers, Canadians will end up paying. Postal workers will end up paying. Why? Because the new agreement will reduce custom fees on U.S. goods purchased online, but only if they're shipped by a private shipper such as UPS or FedEx. So what the heck is that all about? This provision is going to benefit American companies rather than Canada's public service. So I'll ask the question again. Why have the Liberals rolled over rather than stand up for Canadians? The Minister for Transport. The NDP always lacks credibility because they don't understand the importance of free trade agreements. We recognize that importance, and if you look at what we've done over the last 14 months, Canadians are very satisfied with this agreement, which we negotiated. Why? Because it gives us a period of long-term stability with access to the world's biggest market, and that's a reason to rejoice. The honourable member for Rosemont-la-Petite Patrie.
Greenhouse gas emission by half if we want to avert a global climate catastrophe. This is science. This is serious. We're not doing enough to fight climate change, and everybody knows that the Liberals will never meet their targets. In fact, Greenpeace considers that the Prime Minister didn't tell the truth last Sunday when he said we will meet our targets in 2030. He's trying to defend the indefensible, his own failure. Will he admit that Canada is not back, but is falling behind?
The Minister for Government Affairs.
Happy to tell Canadians is that Canada is taking serious action to fight climate change. We said to Canadians in the last election we would have a plan that would reduce our emissions and respect international obligations we made as a country. Mr. Speaker, we also said, and in fact there was a Nobel Prize in economics given recently for this exact premise, that putting a price on pollution is amongst the most effective measures to reduce pollution. Unlike the Conservatives, Mr. Speaker, who think pollution should be free, we have a plan, it's working, and it will benefit the Canadian economy and middle-class Canadians.
The honourable member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. Mr. Speaker, yes, carbon pricing is important, but the Liberal plan is not working. The IPCC says it's 1 minute to midnight, but the Liberal Conservative Pipeline Coalition does not believe in science. It's like a competition. The Conservatives want to revive the Energy East zombie. The Liberals have bought Trans Mountain and have left the door open to Energy East. If it continues, we'll end up in a desert, as in Mad Max. But the Prime Minister will be happy about that because there are only sunny ways in the desert. Seriously, when will they finally get it? The honourable member for Intergovernmental Affairs. Mr. Speaker, we've understood that Canadians expect their government to work seriously to fight climate change. Canadians clearly understand, maybe not the NDP, but Canadians understand that we have a serious plan to fight climate change, and that's in the interest of the Canadian economy. It will benefit jobs for the middle class, and it'll benefit the province of Quebec, where my colleague was elected, and it is starting to work well.
Speaker, earlier today we found out that the Liberal Environment Plan is to buy the votes of Canadians. As more and more provinces bail out of the Prime Minister's failed carbon tax plan, he's decided to bribe Canadians with their own money, and today the Prime Minister admitted as much. How can we trust this government to give us back our own money when they've broken so many other promises? Canadians know they're going to pay more taxes than they'll ever get back from this Liberal government. When will the Liberals stop insulting us and admit that this is simply a massive tax grab?
Thank you. Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, what the Prime Minister said today in Toronto is that our government made a commitment to Canadians in 2015 that we would have a robust plan to tackle climate change. And Mr. Speaker, we've said from the beginning that putting a price on pollution is one of the most effective measures to reduce pollution. We've also said, Mr. Speaker, that we would reinvest by reimbursing Canadians the money that they're paying in the price on pollution. And in fact, Mr. Speaker, middle-class Canadians on average will receive more money than they're paying from the price on pollution.
The honourable member, order. The honourable member for Barrie, Springwater, Oro-Medonte.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister's carbon tax isn't a tax on the Canadian provinces. It is a tax on the Canadian people who don't have any more to give. Canadians who are single parents, Canadians who are struggling with young families, Canadians who are retired and have paid Liberal tax after Liberal tax after Liberal tax, and they don't have any more to give. And now they get to be hit with this new Liberal carbon tax. Canadians are fed up with this Prime Minister's new taxes and want to know, when will he stop demanding more?
Honourable Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, again, I think it's important to remind members that the Conservative Party voted against a middle-class tax cut, which was important to Canadians. He talks about vulnerable seniors, Mr. Speaker. They voted against increasing the guaranteed income supplement to help the most vulnerable seniors. Mr. Speaker, they want to talk about seniors. They were going to raise the age of eligibility to 67 for the old age security. We brought it back to 65. Mr. Speaker, they have no plan to fight climate change. We have a plan that is going to make a difference for Canadians and improve the Canadian economy at the same time.
The honourable member for Battleford, Lloydminster.
Mr. Speaker, the only plan that this government has is to continue to put their hands in the pockets of single mothers who are trying to get their kids to school, to soccer, whatever it may be, to vulnerable seniors who really cannot afford to have another $100 a month tacked onto their bills. They're giving large emitters a pass, Mr. Speaker. And now, magically, they would like to have them believe it'll leave more money in their pockets. Well, this is simply untrue. The Liberal carbon tax doesn't lower emissions. When will the Prime Minister listen to our provinces and scrap the tax?
Mr. Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend wants to talk about putting more money into the pockets of hard-working Canadian families. It's too bad that she voted against the Canada Child Benefit, which did exactly that. And Mr. Speaker, if the Conservatives have no plan to fight climate change, the good news is this government does. And Mr. Speaker, we have a plan that will make a real difference in the fight against climate change, will create good jobs for middle-class Canadians, and will ensure, Mr. Speaker, that hard-working Canadians come out ahead in the fight against climate change. That's what we said we'd do. That's what the Prime Minister announced today in Toronto.
The honourable member for Carleton.
Well, earlier today, the Prime Minister promised that Canadians would get refunds of all the tax they paid. But look at the fine print. Right here, it says in their backgrounder, they'll get most of the money they pay in taxes. And then if you look a little bit further, it says that the taxes will also fund $1.4 billion in new government spending in Ontario alone. So first it was all, then it's most. Isn't it true that after the next election it will be none?
Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend knows that that is exactly not true. Mr. Speaker, we said from the beginning that asking large emitters to pay a price on pollution would give them an incentive to reduce pollution. That's exactly what our government is doing, Mr. Speaker. And if my honourable friend thinks it's a mistake to work with the hospital sector, with the education sector, with low-income housing advocates to ensure that they are also able to reduce their emissions and be more efficient, then he should stand up and say so.
Member for Carleton.
Well, of course, we all support money for hospitals and schools and helping the vulnerable. That's why we already pay taxes. Yes. This is not a justification for imposing yet another layer of taxation on top of what Canadians already pay. But the government's own documents, which I have in my hand, clearly lay out that large industrial polluters will pay nothing whatsoever, while middle-class families will pay more. Isn't this just a tax grab to fund more out-of-control Liberal spending?
The Honourable Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend knows that that is not the case. He knows that his party does not have a plan to fight climate change. He knows that his party for 10 years under Stephen Harper did absolutely nothing to respect Canada's obligations globally and domestically to fight climate change. Mr. Speaker, Canadians know this is real. We saw in my province of New Brunswick historic floods this spring. We've seen the same across the country. We've seen wildfires out west. Mr. Speaker, we need a coherent plan to fight climate change, even if the Conservative Party doesn't have one.
Order. The honourable member for Cape Breton Council, along with everybody else, will come to order. The honourable member for Carleton.
Well, Mr. Speaker, they're planning to raise the cost of gasoline, home heating, and basically all the essentials Canadians require just to survive. And in exchange, they say, here's $12.25 right before the election. Mr. Speaker, their own government documents admit that these $12.50 checks will not compensate people for these higher costs. Is that not yet more evidence that this is merely a tax grab to flush the coffers of this out-of-control spending big government?
Honourable Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I'm surprised to hear the honourable member from Carleton talk about election gimmicks. Canadians remember very well him showing up at an event with a Conservative Party T-shirt and presenting a government check. So, Mr. Speaker, that is something we will not do in the fight against climate change. If he thinks that constitutes an effective plan for climate change, he should stand up and say so.
The honourable member. Order. Order. The honourable member will come to order. The honourable member for New Westminster. The honourable member for New Westminster Burnaby.
The Liberals claim that the economy is thriving, but Canadian households are the most indebted among the 35 OECD countries. Why is that? Because the Liberals have chosen to help their millionaire friends rather than families in need. Today, Jagmeet Singh is calling on the government to fund the pilot project on the basic income cancelled by Doug Ford in Ontario. It's a very important study. So, will the Prime Minister help these people and fund the study? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And with all due respect, where was my friend over the last 3 years when we brought in the child benefit, which was more progressive than any other benefits before? The OECD has said that Canadian households pay fewer than all other households in other countries. We have reduced child poverty in this country. So, Mr. Speaker, this government is progressive and wants to cut inequality from coast to coast.
OECD tells us, they tell us that Canadian household debt has skyrocketed out of control and that we're in the midst of the worst family debt crisis ever and the worst family debt crisis in the industrialized world. I don't understand the hesitation. Liberals love studies. They're studying childcare and pharmacare to death. At least this study helps people now. There are ways to help these families, Mr. Speaker. Today, Jagmeet Singh called for the government to fund...
Order. Order. We're not in grade 7, folks. Let's, come on. Order. The honourable member, order. Order. Both sides. I heard it from both sides. I heard it from both sides. Order. Enough. The honourable member for New Westminster, Burnaby.
They should just call a by-election, Mr. Speaker, so Jagmeet Singh can be in the House of Commons. Jagmeet Singh called for the government to fund the basic income pilot project in Ontario abandoned by Premier Ford. Why won't the Liberals step up, and why won't they do the right thing, Mr. Speaker?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to Minister of Social Development.
We share the disappointment, in particular the impact it's had on the families who participate in this critical experiment, because we know that it was going to produce results that all of us could benefit from as we put together government policy. But let me assure the members on the opposite side that since taking office, we have lifted 650,000 Canadians out of poverty, including 300,000 children. The Canada Housing Benefit, which kicks in next year as part of the National Housing Strategy, is also a form of income support. As well, EI reforms have been kicking in that have also helped Canadians in this situation. This government has not stepped back from supporting Canadians in need, and we will continue to work to make sure we get them the help they deserve.
The honourable member for Richmond Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Defence yesterday committed to reveal exactly when he contacted reporter James Cudmore to give him a job as policy advisor in his department. So now I'm giving him the opportunity for him to tell us exactly when he offered this reporter a job.
Parliamentary Secretary to Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The independence of our judicial system is absolutely key to our democracy. Therefore, it would be inappropriate for me or any other member of this House of Commons to comment on any issue that is currently before the courts. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Richmond Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, I'm simply repeating what the Minister of Defence said yesterday here in the House of Commons. He told us that he would come back with the answer to the question as to when he contacted this reporter to offer him a job as a policy advisor in his department. We already know that on January 8th, this reporter was working for the CBC, and coincidentally, 4 days later, he was hired and working for the department, and this reporter was investigating Liberal interference in the Davie Shipyard contract. So when exactly was the offer made?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members are expected to refrain from discussing matters that are before the courts or tribunals or courts of record. However, Mr. Speaker, that answer was provided to the Leader of the Official Opposition, House Leader yesterday. Thank you.
Honourable member for Milton.
Mr. Speaker, I have full confidence in your ability to make judgments from your seat. And indeed, if there is a problem with the questions that we're asking, I'm sure that you would step in and tell us. But in the meantime, Mr. Speaker, I do have questions for this government. And my question is this. The parliamentary secretary indicates that a key of democracy is at stake here, and I would submit there is, the key to a fair and full defence. The Prime Minister is blocking documents that Mr. Norman needs for a full and fair defence. Who is the Prime Minister protecting?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Because the member's question touches on an issue that is currently before the courts, it would indeed be inappropriate to comment. We do believe in the independence of our judicial system, and we will allow it to do its work. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Milton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, before this latest talking point came out and before he was gagged, the president of the Treasury Board stood up and he indicated that he was just doing his job. But here's the point to that assumption, Mr. Speaker. In order to prove or disprove that, Mr. Norman actually needs to have those documents that the Prime Minister is currently blocking. 7 different departments and agencies are holding back documents that Mr. Norman can utilize in order to determine whether or not he has a full and fair defence. Who is the Prime Minister protecting?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On this side, we do believe in an independent judiciary, while the opposition members keep trying to indirectly prosecute a court case on the floor of this House. That is not the role of this House, Mr. Speaker. It is the role of the courts. Thank you.
Député de Laurier-Sainte-Marie.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, every new development in the Khashoggi case is more grim than the last. And it's truly appalling. But what is also appalling is the treatment of women, dissidents, and minorities by the Saudi regime. What is appalling are the war crimes and famine in Yemen. So, Mr. Speaker, how much is the defense of human rights worth in the eyes of the Prime Minister? How much are the lives of millions of women and children worth? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Led our allies in putting out a G7 statement condemning the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Yesterday, the Prime Minister convened an incident response group to address this serious situation. The explanations offered by Saudi Arabia are inconsistent and lack credibility. We continue to call for a thorough, accountable, transparent, and prompt investigation in full collaboration with the Turkish authorities on the circumstances surrounding Mr. Khashoggi's death. Those responsible for the killing must be held to account and must face justice. Thank you very much.
For Essex.
At committee last week, we heard from finance and CBSA officials who told us out of 74 applications, only 36 companies have been approved for duty drawback or relief. The support promised by this government is not reaching those who desperately need it. Some businesses are giving up altogether because of the long wait times and red tape. This government is ignoring the reality of steelworkers, and they are being laid off as small businesses are struggling to keep their doors open. Will the government finally do the right thing and strike a national tariff task force?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Economic Development.
Speaker, our Canadian steel and aluminum producers are world leaders and important contributors to international supply chains. We're making available, Mr. Speaker, up to $2 billion to defend and protect our Canadian workers in the steel and aluminum industries, 1.7 of which is through EDC and BDC, $250 million through the Strategic Innovation Fund, Mr. Speaker, and $50 million to help companies diversify in order to take advantage of CETA and the CPTPP. Mr. Speaker, we have the backs of the Canadian steel and aluminum workers.
Honorable Député d'Elmer.
Mr. Speaker, all Canadians should be sure that they have the same chances of succeeding in a growing economy. The system must be fair for everyone. When the wealthiest use aggressive tax planning to avoid paying taxes, that leaves middle-class Canadians on the hook for programs and services for all Canadians.
aggressive tax avoidance, but we know that we need to work with our international partners to crack down on tax avoidance at home and abroad. Can the Parliamentary Secretary update us on the government's plan to crack down on tax avoidance?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the member for Hull Aylmer for his question and for his work on this issue on the Finance Committee. We've always been very clear that fighting international tax evasion is a priority.
Standards to allow us to share information with almost 100 other countries to help investigators track money hidden in offshore accounts. On travaille aussi avec les provinces et les territoires.
We're also working with provinces and territories to set up a registry, which was a request.
Bill C-82, this bill implements targeted OECD reforms to existing international tax agreements to prevent corporations and individuals from using aggressive tax avoidance schemes. Thank you, Mr.
The honourable member for Selkirk Interlake Eastman.
Well, Mr. Speaker, Canadians are sick and tired of not getting answers from this Liberal government. We know their friends in the former Ontario Liberal government routinely destroyed evidence whenever they found themselves in hot water. And of course, former Liberal staffers like Gerald Butts and Katie Telford are running the PMO today. So Canadians have the right to know if this government is following the example set by their Ontario Liberal cousins. Has this government destroyed any evidence in the Vice Admiral Mark Norman case?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Again, Mr. Speaker, this government will not comment or speculate on matters referred to an ongoing justice matter. We do believe in an independent justice system, and I'll remind the members opposite that sub judice rules may be breached by public statements that risk prejudicing matters or issues that are before the courts. Thank you.
Member for Selkirk Interlake Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, it's starting to smell like a cover-up in here. This government is alleging that Vice Admiral Mark Norman leaked cabinet secrets. They're dragging his honourable career and distinguished service in the Canadian Armed Forces through the mud. But when it's up to this government to provide the evidence that Vice Admiral Norman needs for his defence, well, they're just drawing a blank. So I asked the Minister of National Defence if he can confirm that his department has not destroyed any evidence related to Admiral Norman's case. Yes.
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The sub judice rule dictates that members are expected to refrain from discussing matters that are before the courts or tribunals which are courts of record. The sub judice convention is to protect the parties in case of awaiting or undergoing trial and persons who stand to be affected by the outcome of such an inquiry. The sub judice convention is a restraint imposed upon the House, but to itself. Therefore, we will not be making further comment. Thank you.
Honourable member for Durham.
Mr. Speaker, in late November 2015, the Privy Council Office launched an investigation into supposed leaks from the Liberal Cabinet meeting that suspended the Davie shipbuilding contract. The PCO engaged the RCMP largely based on the James Cudmore story, and the Minister of the Environment and the President of the Treasury Board were interviewed as part of the investigation. If a federal investigation was underway based almost entirely on a CBC News story by James Cudmore, what would possibly have possessed the Liberals to make the decision to hire James Cudmore and place him in the centre of the investigation?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Once again, Mr. Speaker, we believe in an independent judiciary. The Conservatives are attempting to prosecute a trial on the floor of the House of Commons or to gather evidence. Mr. Speaker, we consider that to be inappropriate and will comment no further. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Durham.
Mr. Speaker, I would invite you to comment on whether these questions can be asked in here, because what we have today is a farce, a tri-service farce. We have a retired Air Force colonel covering for a retired Army colonel about ruining the career of a Navy admiral, Mr. Speaker. CBC reporter James Cudmore wrote stories that led to a PCO and RCMP investigation, but then he was immediately hired by that minister. On what date, Minister, did you or the Prime Minister offer James Cudmore a job?
Order. 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 First of all, the member for Durham is an experienced member and should know that he should direct his comments to the chair, and I think he will also know that question period is not when there are points of order raised. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the answer remains the same. We do believe in an independent judiciary. We do believe in following the sub judice principle, Mr. Speaker, and we will not be commenting on any matter that is before the courts. Thank you.
Député de Jean-Pierre.
Mr. Speaker, can you believe that I still have to get up to ask questions about the Phoenix fiasco? Of course, if the Liberals had listened to their employees, unions, IBM, basically everyone, we could have avoided all this. It doesn't make any sense. Yesterday, the Auditor General revealed that the number of people affected by payroll errors went up again. Come on, is the government upholding the agreements and procedures they put in place? Are the Liberals able to shoulder their responsibilities and solve the problem? The Honourable Minister of Public Services.
Mr. Speaker, the ongoing problems with the Phoenix pay system remain my #1 priority, and this is absolutely unacceptable that our public servants are not being paid. But I tell you, Mr. Speaker, that there is progress being made. Since January 2018, PayPod departments have seen a 21% decrease in the number of transactions awaiting We've increased capacity by 1,500 to the pay center. The backlog has been steadily declining since January 2018, down 100,000 cases, while at the same time we've processed $1.5 billion in retroactive payments for employees. Mr. Speaker, I recognize that there is much more to do on this file, but I can assure you we are making progress.
Député de Mississippi, Churchill River.
Mr. Speaker, Northern Saskatchewan needs women's shelters, and yet Liberals refuse to release the funds they promised for a shelter run by the Athabasca Health Authority. Indigenous and Northern women are the most at risk to violence, Mr. Speaker. Many have to travel hundreds of kilometers to get the help they need. This is unacceptable. What are the Liberals waiting for to act on their promise to Northern women and release the funds for the much-needed shelter in Black Lake?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Ministry of Social Development.
I'd like to thank the member opposite for the question and her dedication to making sure that the services that are needed in northern parts of this country are received by the residents and people that need those services. The National Housing Strategy has a specific carve-out for housing for women, and in particular for women escaping violence, and there are supports in other ministries as well for the shelters that have been described. I'd like to talk to the member after question period to get the specifics of the case involved so we can follow up. There is no priority more important to this government to making sure women are safe, girls are safe, and housing is a critical component of that. That's why the National Housing Strategy addresses it such.
Député de Bellechasse, Lévis.
Mr. Speaker, we've seen it for several days that the Liberals are hiding information that is essential for Vice Admiral Norman to have a fair trial. We now also know that James Cudmore, the one who revealed that Davy was going to lose a contract because of Liberal interference, was curiously hired by the Minister of Defence. My question is simple. As the member for Davy, are the Liberals trying to sink the Davy shipyard and Quebec's economy at the same time?
Monsieur le Président, le gouvernement.
Mr. Speaker, the government does not comment or speculate on matters linked to a matter that is before the courts. On this side of the House, we believe in an independent judiciary. I will remind the members that the sub judice rule can be undermined by public statements that could prejudice matters that are before the courts.
Mr. Speaker, it's a shame that the Parliamentary Secretary, herself a former officer in the Canadian Forces, has allowed herself to be used by the Prime Minister to shield this government from giving another officer, Vice Admiral Mark Norman, the evidence that he needs to provide a fair trial. They're covering it up, Mr. Speaker. When will they stop that cover-up and release the evidence Mark Norman needs to receive a fair trial?
Mr. Speaker, he knows not of what he speaks. Mr. Speaker, I believe in an independent judiciary. I believe it is key, and therefore I do believe it would be inappropriate to discuss this on the floor of the House of Commons. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Chilliwack Hope.
Mr. Speaker, what I speak of is this government withholding evidence that Mark Norman needs to get a fair trial. Answering questions in the House of Commons will not impact the trial of Mark Norman, but withholding the critical evidence he needs to mount a defense certainly will. The more the Liberals hide, the more this looks like a cover-up. Who are they protecting? What are they trying to hide? Why don't they just release the evidence today?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, this is not a courtroom. This is the floor of the House of Commons. And attempts to indirectly prosecute a case on the floor of this House of Commons, we believe is inappropriate, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
I have to remind members that the time to answer someone is not when they're speaking, it's when one has their turn. The Honourable Member for Don Valley North.
Mr. Speaker, improving energy efficiency is one of the simplest and most cost-effective ways to address climate change, while also helping the pocketbooks of hard-working Canadians. Today, we celebrate the third annual Energy Star Day here in Canada. Could the Minister of Natural Resources please tell the House what this means for Canadian families?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank the member from Don Valley North for his question and for his hard work. Energy efficiency is an important part of our plan to tackle climate change. That is why we're proud to partner with Energy Star to help Canadians save money on their utility bills, create good middle-class jobs, and protect our environment. This Energy Star Day encourages Canadians to make a simple change to be more energy efficient and save money by reducing their energy bills. This simple change will help make a big difference. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, unlike the Liberal members for Quebec, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business considers that there really is a labour shortage in Quebec. The Vice President of the Federation considers that some businesses will have to cut down on their operations or even close temporarily. In other words, in Quebec, the labour shortage is being felt on the ground. There's a wide range of solutions that are available to the federal level of government. Why is the Liberal government not taking real action right now, proposing real solutions to this problem?
Well, Mr. Speaker,
the Minister of Labour.
Every time this member gets up and talks about how our economy is growing so quickly, how our unemployment rate is so low, that we have record numbers of people in the workforce, that we have a new challenge. So thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank the member very much for the opportunity to talk about this. As we work to make sure that everyone has the skills they need, that every Canadian has the opportunities to gain employment in whatever sector is experiencing shortages, we also know that having a strong immigration policy is an important part of our growth strategy here in Canada. So I'd encourage the member to talk to his colleagues about their attitude.
Honourable Member for Port Moody, Coquitlam.
More than 4 years ago, Imperial Metals Mount Polley mine disaster sent 25 million cubic meters of water and toxic mine waste rushing through Hazeltine Creek into Quesnel Lake. Mine tailings containing arsenic, cadmium, mercury, and selenium still sit at the bottom of the lake. Not only is this a major sockeye salmon rearing lake in the Fraser watershed, but it supplies drinking water to local communities. This was the largest environmental disaster in Canadian history. When will the Liberals do their job, take action, and lay charges?
Hear, hear.
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment.
Mr. Speaker, the health of our oceans and lakes is a top priority of this government. We have faith in the enforcement mechanisms that we have in place within the Department of Fisheries and Oceans to address measures such as this. We will continue to monitor this situation and take the steps that are necessary to keep our oceans and waterways safe, clean, and healthy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Davenport.
Mr. Speaker, our government is proud to be taking action to grow and strengthen our armed forces, and we know that diversity is an essential factor in mission success. Women have proudly been serving in Canada's military for a century, and today they play a pivotal role in defending Canada's safety and security. Can the Minister of National Defence tell this House how we are continuing to increase female representation in the forces?
Minister.
increasing the representation of women in the Canadian Armed Forces at home and abroad, and we are making progress. 5% more women joined the Armed Forces last year than the previous year. And during Women's History Month, I want to pay tribute to the strong Canadian Armed Forces women like Commander Kelly Williamson, who was named one of Canada's 100 most powerful women last year. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Mr. Speaker, I asked yesterday if UNRWA, an organization that employs anti-Semitic teachers and distributes anti-Semitic material, was subject to a values test before receiving Canadian government funding. No answer yesterday, so again today. Did the Liberals apply the same values test to UNRWA's application for $50 million as they applied to Canadian charities and summer camps looking to hire Canadian students?
The Honourable Minister of International Development. Mr. Speaker, I can assure you that my team and I followed all the steps necessary to make sure that the United Nations Organization for Palestinian Refugees is doing its work in a transparent manner and is upholding human rights and is working also. Mr. Speaker, I visited Palestine this summer. I can assure you that this is the best place for children to be in school. It contributes to security in the region. The Honourable Member for Montcalm. Mr. Speaker, the Saudi regime lied repeatedly about what happened to the journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Lied repeatedly about how he was killed. And lied repeatedly while pretending not to know where the journalist's body was. So tell me, Mr. Speaker, does the Liberal government believe the Saudi regime when it claims not to use Canadian armored vehicles against civilians in Yemen? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to Consular Affairs.
Condemn in the strongest possible terms the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. The Minister is in close contact with our allies and partners, including the UK, Germany and Turkey. Our government will continue to have these conversations. As I said earlier, we support a transparent, thorough, accountable and prompt investigation into the death of Mr. Khashoggi so that those who are responsible will be held to account. The Minister has spoken on the phone with her counterpart, the Saudi Arabia Foreign Minister, and shared our deep concerns. It is vital that we remain united in the call for justice.
The Honourable Member for Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes Verchères. Mr. Speaker, in 2009, the Conservatives wrote a nice, fat, blank check to Chrysler by granting a loan that would never have to be repaid. This week, the Liberals supported this by signing a check in secret. It cost taxpayers $2.5 billion. The Conservatives made a loan of over $1 billion to GM and we're still waiting to be repaid. This is money that belongs to Quebecers to prop up Ontario while Quebec struggles. Who's going to pay, GM or taxpayers?
Secretary to the Minister of International Trade Diversification.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my colleague for his question. When the Harper Conservatives chose to bail out Chrysler in 2009, they had no intention of ever recovering the loan to old Chrysler. They even went as far as to approve 100% of the loss at the exact same time they handed out the money. Our government put every effort in recovering that money, and when we couldn't do that, we did what the Conservatives intended on doing from the first place.
Saanich, Gulf Island. Order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In reference to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report released October 8th, it's very, very clear that we have one chance only, not just one chance in a period of time, but one chance forever to ensure that our children have a livable world. That's what the scientists told us. That means that we must improve our targets globally, not just Canada. Yeah. So it's not a political question. It's a human question. It's a question of whether our country can lead the world and show the political will by improving our target at the COP24 negotiations in Poland. We cannot risk deciding our children's future is expendable.
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment.
I'd like to begin by thanking the honourable member for a thoughtful question. In the wake of the IPCC report, we all need to work collectively to improve our record on the environment, to preserve our planet for future generations. I was so proud when we achieved the Paris Agreement, and we're going to meet or exceed the targets by putting a price on pollution that protects the interests of middle-class families. We're developing a clean fuel standard. We're putting regulations on methane and HFCs. We're investing in clean energy and taking a number of different steps. My sincere hope is that we can work collectively, regardless of partisan affiliation, for once, to achieve targets, to do better by our planet, and I wish that everyone cared as much as the honourable.
Orders of the day. Order. I encourage colleagues to take their conversations into the hall, into the lobbies or elsewhere, and perhaps members could assist me by saying shh. Let's try that again. I thank colleagues for their assistance. Je suis maintenant prêt.
I'm now prepared to rule on the question of privilege raised on October 5th, 2018 by the Honourable Member for Repentigny concerning the number of questions allotted to independent members during oral questions. I would like to thank the Honourable Member for having raised the matter. In speaking to her question of privilege, the member for Repentigny argued that when the number of independent members recently increased from 14 to 15, they were entitled to have an additional question per week during question period. Without it, she claims, there is an unacceptable inequity between independent members and members from recognized parties.
While some may see this issue as simply mathematical, the Honourable Member for Repentigny raises a question that goes directly to the matter of how our parliamentary institutions are structured. As honourable members are aware, our modern parliamentary system